What defines a modern 3-row SUV? Well, the mantra is simple. Something which is a comfortable family mover with enough space for 6 or 7. Can handle challenging terrains with ease and feels premium. And that's exactly what we have today. In fact, not one, but 3 of them. The question is, which is the best amongst these? The Mahindra XUV700 has been the talk of the town. Barely a few days after its launch, the car got more than 60,000 bookings. That's massive, isn't it? But here's where the true test of this SUV lies as we pit it against some of its well-established rivals like the Hyundai Alcazar and the Tata Safari. Joining me today on this exclusive comparison are 2 of my colleagues, Kingshuk and Shubham, as we try and answer the most important question. Which amongst these 3-row SUVs is your best bet in the market? Kingshuk, we've been trying to answer this question for a while now. Is the Safari anything more than a 7-seater Harrier?
I think that's a pertinent question, Shams. The Tata Safari is being positioned above the Tata Harrier, and of course the company says that this offers much more in terms of features, practicality and performance. So that's what we have to wait and see.
Shubham, I have the same question for you. A 7-seater Creta or something more?
Shams, in my opinion, the Alcazar picks up exactly where Creta leaves. It looks more SUV-ish and has more features, of course, and obviously you get a bigger engine.
All these SUVs are very different to look at. And then there's the MG Hector Plus, which too is a 3-row version of the Hector and is available in the same 6 or 7-seater layout. But sadly, MG is not able to provide us with a test car yet. While the XUV700 has a very contemporary and individual design, the other two definitely have that family face flavor and are inspired by the respective compact SUV derivatives. Tata Safari builds up on Harrier's design and definitely looks very well-rounded, urban and yet has the butch appeal of an SUV. The Alcazar, on the other hand, has a Creta sense very much intact, but looks more sophisticated and well MPV-ish. The XUV is the showstopper. It looks striking and that brawny sense of an SUV is very appealing. Yes, the front end looks a bit overdone, especially with those floating DRLs, but it's still charming and gets you all the attention. Having said that, all 3 of them surprisingly are very different when it comes to dimensions. The XUV is the longest of the lot, while the Safari is the widest. But it is the Alcazar which has the longest wheelbase. So let's see how that reflects on the inside, and we begin with the oldest of the lot. So the first car that we've gotten into is the new Tata Safari, and as you can see, Kingshuk's on the first row, I'm on the second row and Shubham is on the third row to give you an all-round perspective of how the cabin is on this SUV. Let's begin with you, Kingshuk.
Right.
Let's get through the features that you get in the Safari first.
Alright, so the first thing that you notice is you get a really high seating position, which gives you a commanding view out of the windscreen. And the steering, it feels really good, really chunky to hold. And apart from that, as far as infotainment is concerned, you have the screen here, 8.8 inch if I'm not mistaken. Of course, it also gets Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. And apart from that, you have these drive modes here, but we'll talk about it later as and when we begin driving. Recently, Tata Motors also added a wireless charging feature in the car apart from ventilated seats, which this car does not get. But yes, you do have ventilated seats on the top spec model of the Tata Safari.
Alright, so that's the first row. Here on the second row, I get a lot of practicality because let me begin with this. I can slide forward the front row seat. Just turn this lever and I can create more space for myself on the second row, and I can create more space for the passenger on the third row by sliding forward my seat here. So this is a 60-40 split, so one part can go forward, one part can remain where it was. So that's the good practicality feature here. You have an armrest with two cup holders, you have AC vents on the B pillar, and the sunroof also is quite big to give me that more airy feel in the Safari cabin.
Well, thank you for this, Shams. I finally have more room for my knees here, and as usual I am sitting knees up, but this space is actually good for shorter commutes. For features, I have also got AC vents here, I have charging ports for my phone, and I also have space to keep my phone here on the armrest.
So Shubham, I hope you're really comfortable in the third row of the Safari.
Finally I am.
Alright, ladies and gentlemen, after the Tata Safari, we are here in the Hyundai Alcazar. Now, again, I'm in the driving seat, Shams there is in the middle seat, and Shubham, of course, is in the third row. So, Shubham, let's start with you this time. So, how do you think is the space at the third row compared to the Tata Safari?
Well, King Shuk, after Safari, this really feels very compact. I'm not in the best position and I'm actually quite cramped. I don't have, my knees are brushing against Sam's sheet, and yeah, so not good for an adult of my size.
And what about the features that you get in the third row?
Yeah, so features, obviously I have aircon vents, and I have two USB ports on both sides, cup holders, and place to keep my mobile. So these are the features that I get here in the third row.
Alright, Shams, what about you?
Well, the second row, it's a mixed bag for me, Kikshuk, because yes, like the Safari, I can slide forward or back my seats, or I can recline them as well. And these are captain seats, which also is an option on the Safari as well. But these are not as big as the ones that we saw in Safari. On Safari, I was getting more thigh support than these seats.
Right.
So they're comfortable, yes, but yeah, a bit more thigh support would be even better on this car. In terms of features, though, it's a nice place, better than the Safari. So I get a wireless charger here.
Wow.
I get my AC vents, of course, now come here between the seats. A USB charging point also, phone holder, which was the case with the Safari as well. Center armrest, some storage space, and this tray holder, which can carry up to 3.5 kgs of weight. And finally, I get these sun blinds as well, something that we did not see on the Safari.
So that's a nice touch. Absolutely. Now, sitting here on the driver's seat, the first thing that you notice is the two-tone upholstery inside the cabin. Looks and feels very premium. Apart from that, you have a 10.25-inch touchscreen infotainment system. Again, Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, and connected car technology as well. This car gets Hyundai's Blue Link technology. So that's a nice touch there. And this car, the Hyundai Alcazar, it gets a Bose sound system. The Tata Safari gets a JBL Harman sound system, and the Mahindra XUV700, it gets a Sony sound system. And apart from that, you also have ventilated seats. So that's a nice touch. You have 3 levels, 3 settings for ventilated seats for the front passengers, and there's wireless charging as well, USB ports of course, and you also have this rotary knob which gives you options to choose from the drive and traction modes. So there are 3 traction modes to choose from, which are snow, sand, and mud. And there are 3 drive modes to choose from, which are comfort, eco, and sport. And we'll tell you about those when we start driving the car.
And finally, let's get to the newbie in the segment, the XUV700.
So here we are on the second row of the XUV700. Quite similar to Safari, I have to say, very similar look and feel. The seats quite big. I'm very happy with the thigh support. I think it's the best amongst all 3 cars we've seen today. Otherwise, things are quite similar. You get your AC vents between the seats. I have a center armrest here. 60-40 format of the seats to recline them. But a major drawback here is that you cannot slide them forward to create more space for the third row. But I can still slide forward the first row seat by doing something similar to what I did on the Safari. I get a type C charging point here unlike the other two cars, and again a small phone holder as well. The piano black, this wooden finish on the doors is something nice, adds a premium touch, and once again quite a big sunroof. Are you getting a feel of the sunroof, Shubham?
Well, Shams, I am getting a feel of the sunroof, though I'm not happy with the space as you are, because it's marginally better than the Alcazar, but still I'm quite cramped in. Even the headroom is not good, and I'm again seating knees up. The width is also not much, so again this space is best suited for kids in the family. And even in terms of features, so I get a single 12-volt charger here. In other two cars you have USB ports, and just a single cup holder, no space for my phone. Yeah, so in terms of features also, Alcazar and Safari score better in the third row.
And then over to Mr. Datta on the first row. Let's see what his feedback is about the features this car comes with.
So, Shams, as far as features are concerned, yes, this does miss out on ventilated seats, and that's a big miss because the other two cars get it, the top spec models at least. And of course, this along with the Hyundai Alcazar gets blind spot monitor. So the moment you switch on the indicator towards the left or the right, you'll have a small display here on the instrument console which shows the traffic coming from behind you, and that's a really good feature to have. Apart from that, you have this Mercedes styled twin screens on the dashboard. It gives the dash a really premium refined look, and that's really nice. Though this color, it looks really good, but in Indian dusty conditions, I think it is going to be a difficult bit to maintain this color and the fit and finish of the upholstery. But like I said, it does feel premium, and of course you do get a big sunroof like you mentioned. In terms of connectivity, yes, this comes with Mahindra's Adreno X connectivity technology. You also have Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, and it is wireless, right Shubham?
Right.
So yes, all three SUVs have their hits and misses. While latest features like a panoramic sunroof, wireless charger and connected tech amongst others are common, the Safari and the Alcazar are more practical in terms of features, offering ventilated seats, forward sliding second row seats to make more room for third row passengers, and auto dimming rear view mirrors. The Mahindra XUV700 and the Hyundai Alcazar get a proper eSIM based connected car suite, along with bigger, sharper and more intuitive 10.25-inch touchscreen and digital instrument panel that integrates blind spot monitors as well. While the 8.8-inch touchscreen in the Safari feels a bit out of place and isn't as sharp, it also gets an app-based IRA connected car tech and not the eSIM one. And then this top sped luxury line XUV700 AX7L with us comes with advanced driver assistance systems or ADAS, bringing in more driver assist features like forward collision warning, cross traffic alert and lane change alert amongst others. So yes, the Mahindra XUV700 is the most modern SUV of the lot. But even the Hyundai Alcazar doesn't fall behind much. But if practicality and seating comfort for long distance travel is what you're looking at, the Tata Safari inches ahead of the two. But that's just half the story. Let's get to the other half as we get these SUVs moving. And again, we'll go with the oldest one first. The Tata Safari gets the tried and tested Fiat-sourced 2-litre 4-cylinder Cryotech diesel engine that belts out 168 brake horsepower at 3,750 rpm and 350 Newton meters from 1750 to 2500 rpm. The oil burner is mated to either a 6-speed manual or a Hyundai-sourced 6-speed torque converter automatic transmission. With us is the automatic.
So we've told you all about the features and the comfort that Tata Safari offers. Now we'll talk about driving. So we are driving the diesel variant, of course. The Safari does not get a petrol variant, and that's something surprising considering the trend towards petrol even in terms of SUVs. So we have the 2-litre diesel engine that we are driving, And in terms of ride quality on broken surfaces, it's really good. What do you feel, Shams?
I think you're right. The Safari, we've been now almost seeing this car for a year now. And one thing that has impressed us the most on this car has been the ride quality. Of course, we get to see back to back after being in the Safari how we do feel in the other two cars.
Right.
But standalone, ride quality on the Safari is actually one of the highlights on this car.
Right. And Shubham, what do you feel about the third row when the car is in motion?
Even for the third row, the ride quality is good. The lateral movements, you don't feel it that much here. And even for the space. So I am comfortable for shorter commutes. I think I'll be pretty much fine here.
Right. And if we talk about the driving dynamics of the car, the handling in particular, so this particular car, it's a media car, and I sense that there's some amount of play in the steering. The steering itself is not very, feedback oriented. It is light. It does weigh up at higher speeds, but the overall sense of confidence that you get when driving the car, it isn't that great. And as far as braking is concerned, yes, the brakes on the Safari are quite adequate.
I also like the levels of insulation we're getting in this cabin, Kingshuk. I don't know, Shubham, if you feel the same. But this being a diesel, I expected this to be a slightly more louder cabin. But that's not the case with the Safari.
No, even for the third row, the cabin insulation is pretty much good. And overall, it's still comfortable.
Okay, then let's get to the most compact SUV of the lot.
You get both petrol and diesel engine options on the Alcazar. It's the same Creta sourced 1.5 litre 4-cylinder CRDI unit, belting out 113 brake horsepower at 4000 RPM and 250 Nm of peak torque between 1500 and 2750 RPM. The one with us is the petrol variant with a 2 litre 4-cylinder MPI motor under its hood. It's a relatively high revving engine with 157 bhp at 6500 RPM and 191 Nm of peak torque at 4500 RPM. Both engines are available with either a 6-speed manual or a 6-speed torque converter automatic gearbox.
So we've begun our drive of the Hyundai Alcazar, and once again we begin with Shubham and the third row. Shubham, how comfortable will you be in spending long hours on the third row of this SUV?
Well, after Safari, Shams, to be honest, I am not very comfortable here, and I won't prefer this area to spend long hours or for a longer travel. First, for kids in the family, probably this space is idle, though the width is not much, so probably two adults, definitely they won't be as comfortable here in the Alcazar.
I think slightly different opinion I have about the second row. I am rather comfortable sitting here. It's giving me decent knee room and shoulder room, so the seats also are decently sized, so no complaints on that front. And because of the dimensions of this SUV, it's not very tall. It's I think they work in the favor of this car, so body roll is minimized because of that, which means that we can spend more time in this car without getting tired. So stuck in a traffic jam, for example, or slow moving traffic, or even on the highway for long drives, we will enjoy our drive here on the second row of the Alcazar. The good thing with this car is that you get a lot of engine and gearbox options, right, Kingshuk?
Yes, that's true. And the car that we are driving right now, it has the bigger 2-litre petrol engine, and the throttle response is quite nice, although you feel a sense of lag in the bottom end, which is fine, which is not a deal breaker by any thought of the imagination. And if you talk about the ride quality, it is plush. It is neither too stiff nor too hard. It gives you the right balance between the both. And if you talk about the handling, yes, the steering weighs up quite nicely, and if you compare it to the Creta, I would say that the handling of the Creta and the Alcazar are more or less similar. So it is a comfortable car to drive. It is a comfortable car to be in if you're going for long drives. And yes, the top end, it is slightly lacking, but that's all right. The bottom end is really, really strong. So that's the good part.
And finally, we come to the latest launch in the segment. The XUV2 is offered with both petrol and diesel engine options, and the latter one, the 2.2 litre 4-cylinder CRDI, is offered in 3 different states of tunes. While in the base MX it can be revved more, but is a bit humble at 153 bhp and 360 Nm of peak torque, and is offered with a 6-speed manual as standard. In the AX, the manual trim churns out 182 bhp at 3500 rpm and 420 Nm at 1600 to 2800 rpm. This torque output goes up to 450 Nm from 1750 to 2800 rpm when it's mated to the 6-speed auto gearbox. But we've got the 2-litre 4-cylinder turbo petrol with us, which has been quite in demand. It belts out 197 brake horsepower at 5000 rpm and 380 Nm from 1750 to 3000 rpm across variants and irrespective of gearbox options. And speaking of the gearbox, even this one is available with a 6-speed manual or a 6-speed auto. Now petrol, like the other two, comes with front wheel drive setup as standard, while the diesel gets the all-wheel drive system as an option in the automatic iteration.
Alright, ladies and gentlemen, we have now begun our drive in the Mahindra XUV700. Now this, as we said, is a petrol model, comes with an automatic gearbox, and yes, it is a rather peppy engine. The bottom end shove is really nice. The mid-range is really strong, so if you're driving this car in the city or out on the highways going on a long drive, you will enjoy this car. And why I say so is because I spent a lot of time with this car, because we drove the XUV700 to Ladakh, to Umlingla, which is the highest motorable pass on the face of this earth. And that brings me to the driving dynamics, the handling of the car, which I think all of us agree is perhaps the best amongst the 3 SUVs that we have here today. The car doesn't get out of shape. The feedback from the steering is really nice. Even if you're cornering hard like we did on all those mountainous roads, it was a very confidence-inspiring affair. The engine, like we said, is really peppy. But coming to the ride quality and comfort, especially that of the passengers, we have Shams in the middle row and Shubham in the third row. So Shams, we'll begin with you.
You know, we spent good time in the Tata Safari and we've been very impressed with the ride quality. I think the XUV700 is giving the Safari some tough competition in that respect.
Right.
Maybe it's slightly inferior, but there's not a big difference between the ride quality. This one also, you're pretty impressed by what you're getting, and you can spend good time here without getting tired. And you spoke about handling. I'm surprised because it's a tall car.
Right.
It's a big, bulky SUV, but still the amount of body roll I thought would be there in the XUV700 is not there. So on both those counts, dynamics wise, I think this car scores very highly.
Shubham, what do you have to say?
So Kingshuk, if we talk about ride quality and handling specifically, I think the XUV700 again score higher than Safari and Alcazar, and that's because again those lateral movements are quite well contained. Even when you were making those lane change departures, I was in my position. But just that because I am so much cramped here, I really feel hemmed in and I have a very tight headroom. So if when the car goes over undulations, the scare of rubbing my head against the roof is really worrying me.
So while the Alcazar feels peppier and more zippy to drive in the city, on the highway it feels a bit stressed when revved to the red. The Safari, on the other hand, is quite the opposite. It feels in its element on the longer and open stretch, while in the city it feels a bit too bulky and cumbersome to cut through the traffic and isn't as taut with its body manners. But it is the Mahindra XUV700 with the right balance. You don't feel the length and bulk behind the wheel, and it's pretty easy to drive in the city, while on the highway at higher speeds it pleasantly surprises with its handling and body manners, while the ride too feels settled and not overly stiff. Well, before the final answer, there's one very important aspect that we at carandbike have been stressing for a long time: safety. And recently we learned about the XUV700 bagging a full 5-star crash test rating in adult occupant safety and 4 stars for child occupant safety by the global NCAP. If you haven't seen it yet, do check out our exclusive crash test report video at carandbike's YouTube channel. Now the Safari and the Alcazar are yet to be tested for safety, but all three SUVs get more than requisite safety features like ABS with EBD, electronic stability program and traction control, and also front, side and curtain airbags. The Mahindra scores slightly higher as its curtain airbags extend to the third row as well. And then everything boils down to the prices. The XUV700 undercuts both models at the base variant by over 2.5 lakh rupees, while only the range-topping luxury trims are around 1.5 lakh rupees more expensive than the equivalent Alcazar. The Safari with all the bells and whistles costs over a lakh more than the fully loaded all-wheel drive XUV700. So without any second guessing, the XUV700 has a big edge, being the most affordable of the lot and by quite a margin. Pretty much explains those overwhelming booking numbers.
So it's verdict time here on this exclusive comparison between these three hugely popular SUVs. Let's begin with the Safari.
So Shams, in terms of look and design, the Tata Safari stands out. It has bold muscular presence and offers solid road presence. Also, the ride quality of the Safari on broken roads is really good, and this car is really spacious as well.
Well, for the Alcazar, it scores higher in terms of features, and even for looks, it looks very urban, and for an urban buyer, for their lifestyle, the compact dimensions really help in city traffic conditions.
But it is the XUV700 which really takes on the good qualities of both the Safari and the Alcazar and builds on them. It is a well-rounded package, and when it comes to dynamics and performance, it clearly takes the lead. And that is why in this exclusive comparison of ours, the newest car in the segment is also the best car in the segment.